Okay, welcome to a short video that is designed to help you make sure that you understand how to workshop in this course, particularly in terms of how to use Perusall, which is going to be our major method of participating in workshops. So this video is going to show you how to get there, how to utilize Perusall, and then we'll kind of end with just some things that you can be thinking about when it comes to the kind of ways that you want us to workshop your work. So I'm here in Canvas. I'm in student mode. So this generally should basically be what the course page should have looked like for you for the last several weeks as we've gotten started. And what you're going to be doing, the easiest way to get to the material that you're going to be reading for one another is to click on this Perusall 1.3 that's going to be over here on the left. Now, the first time that you go into Perusall, it may prompt you with a couple of very simple questions in terms of getting yourself oriented and set up. I can't walk you through that for complicated software reasons as they relate to being in student mode in Canvas and trying to go into that. But if you have any problems ending up on our course homepage in Perusall, please just drop me a line and we'll get it sorted out. Now, normally when you are working on workshops in Perusall, you're going to want to be on this assignments tab that's over here. But right now, as I am making this video, none of you have turned in work yet, so there are no assignments. But you will see once all of that work comes in, you will see everyone's piece in kind of a row right around here. It'll look kind of like this looks like, except with several things. And you'll always have to make sure that you've clicked on the appropriate one before you click open/start assignment, okay? But I'm going to be working from a sample workshop document today. So what Perusall is, first of all, is it's a really useful annotating tool. So you can upload just about anything to it. And when a student opens it, they get to make notes all over it. So the reason that we're using this is this way, your workshop will not just be you post a file in a discussion board, everyone reads it, and then everyone just sends you a note on Canvas or posts in a discussion board. There is a discussion board for each of these. I'll get to that near the end. But this will just afford you an opportunity to get more detailed, better line-by-line feedback. So the first thing that you're going to be asked to do the week that we start workshop is once I've got everybody's work up, you're going to find your workshop piece and you're going to, under that assignments tab, you're going to go in, you're going to open it. And the first thing you're going to do is somewhere near the top, at the beginning of your workshop piece should be your name. Highlight your name. And what will happen when you highlight something is a little box will open up. So if I highlight this over here on the right, a little current conversation will show up. So what you're going to do in that little note is you're going to basically tell us what you want us to do with your piece. So I'll come back to what that means in a little bit, but essentially that's what you're going to do. What happens is once you have made a comment, it will pop up on the screen as this highlight mark for other people to take a look at. So they'll be able to click on it, and over here, the note that you've put will show up. So when you are reading other people's work, the first thing you are going to do is click on their highlighted little note at the top and read through their requests as it relates to workshop. Like I said, I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, as the writer, the other thing that you have the entirely optional choice to do or not do is to add notes throughout your piece. So here I've included a note here that just basically tells you what kind of notes you can include. So if you would like to add some notes that are kind of directing people's attention to something, clarifying something, inquiring about something, you are welcome to do that. I don't have a sense of what those should or should not look like. And there is no requirement that you do this. If you just want to take your work and have us look at it and be done with it, that's totally fine. But if you have particular things you want to make comments on about your work throughout it, that's totally up to you as well. So what you as the readers of work are going to be doing is you're going to be reading through people's work and be inserting notes as if you were, as if you had a hard copy of the work in front of you and were scribbling marginal comments. I wouldn't worry too much about things like, oh, there's a spelling mistake here, or this comma doesn't belong there, et cetera, et cetera. We're not really worrying about those kinds of editorial cleanup things. What we're thinking about, generally speaking, is things that we think are working nicely in the piece and then suggestions that we have for revising and or expanding the work. Now, one question you may have in mind is, well, how many comments should I be making? Well, I don't have a specific number. And part of the reason for that is because we are in a course where some people are writing poetry, some people are writing fiction, some people are writing nonfiction. The number of comments is going to really vary depending on how much material there is. If someone has written 3 relatively short, like 10-line each poems, and someone else has written a 2,000-word essay, there is simply far more material that can be commented on in that essay than that poem. So it's really hard to say, everyone needs to make 12 comments on each piece or something like that. What I'm going to say is this. The way that I always envision the kind of work that should go into a workshop from each writer's perspective is that you should give what you hope to receive. So if you come into this with the expectation that people are making all sorts of line-by-line notes for you, you should be offering that amount. This is not to say that you should feel like you can blow off doing any work by saying, well, I'm cool if no one puts comments in mine, so I'm not going to put comments in anybody's. So you should have that, what is good earning and good effort in giving real feedback to someone, and what does that look like? If I see a problem in the very first workshop set, I will let you know. So if anyone is not rising to the occasion, I will send you some private comments about that. But otherwise, you should use your judgment as someone thinking about, okay, this is what I should be doing because this is what I want to receive. Now, the other note I want to make about that is when you are making an in-text comment, what I would ask is that you only highlight a small little piece. So let's say I want to make a comment about this whole paragraph. I might just highlight the last letter of the last word of the paragraph. Look, and a comment spot box will come up. I type up my comments and I push enter, and then it'll be there. The reason that I would ask you to do that instead of highlighting the whole paragraph is if you highlight a huge section, it makes it very difficult for other people to make comments or for the writer to see the comments that have been made about other very specific sections. So even if you want to make a global type of comment, which is great, you should just highlight a small piece, preferably something that's not already highlighted, to make your comment. The other thing that I would strongly suggest is as you are reading, assuming you're not, someone's going to be the first person to read. It may not always be me. But if you are the first person to read, what I would suggest is, if you are not the first person to read, I'm sorry, click on your classmates' comments as you see them. They will be highlighted, so you'll be able to tell where someone has made a note and read that comment. And you can enter a dialogue with that person. So if I clicked here and I wanted to respond to what is written here, I can just type that there and it'll create a conversation for everybody to have. And so please feel free to respond to those comments. You could agree, you could disagree, you could offer an extension or another way of thinking about something, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are valuable and useful comments as well. Okay. So that's the basics of what you're going to do in Perusall. Really quickly, before I turn to the questions about like what you might ask people to do, let me just address the other piece of workshopping. So think of this as the marginal notes that you would make on a document. The other thing that you're going to be doing is if you go into your modules and you look at each week for workshopping, you're going to find these discussion boards and that are called workshop notes. So if I click on one of these, what you're going to be asked to do is to write up about a 500-word response to each person's piece. So if there's one person for that day, just one 500-word note. If there's 2 or 3 people, 500 words per person, all as one post, but just make sure it's clear who you're writing to in each one. Where your primary focus is on strengths and opportunities that you see. So what's working well in the piece, and what do you view as opportunities for expansion and revision? I really don't like to think about feedback as here's what's good and here's what's bad. That just, I think, creates unpleasant vibes. What we're going for is not this is bad. It's here's what I think you could do, or what you could try, or what you could add, or what you might tinker with. If the writer has given particular questions or approaches, please also try to integrate those in those notes. You can also write your notes thinking either both in terms of broad macro thoughts as well as specific lines and moments. Maybe you just really love a little bit of dialogue, or there's an image that a poet used that you just can't get out of your head. And it is okay if what you write in your note is sometimes reflective of or repeating some of the comments that you made on Perusall. So if you said that you really loved a particular line for some reason in a poem, on Perusall, you can mention that again in your note if you like. That reaffirmation is never a bad thing. Okay. I just think it's very useful for people to get the sort of large scale feedback and the small scale feedback to really get a well rounded sense of what to do with their work. Okay. Okay, so then the last thing that I want to talk about is what is it that I mean by how you want to get workshopped or what kind of feedback you want. So what I've included in my fake sample note are a couple of ways that you can think about workshop. Do not think of this as an exhaustive list or a limiting list, and don't think either that you have to pick one and that's it. This is really meant to be a guide for if you are someone who has never workshopped before, or aren't really sure what it means to choose what kind of feedback that you get. If you have a sense of what you want to do and what would be most useful for you, you can just stop watching this video now. But these are just some ways and methods of getting feedback that I've both received and had students get in the past that I think are really effective. So probably the most traditional style is what I call the critical response, which is here's what's working, here's what's strong about this, and here are suggestions for revision and expansion. So that's where your fellow classmates will point out, here's what we think is working well, and here are our suggestions for you. Another option is the writer asks questions. This is where you would pop questions throughout the piece using those notes, where you've got very particular things that you want us to respond to. Now, what I will say about this is if you do a whole lot of that, what's going to end up happening is it's reasonable to expect that most of the notes people are going to give you are going to be in response to those questions. So you shouldn't expect to get lots of notes elsewhere if you incorporate lots of those questions, okay? Another option is the flip side of that, where you want readers to ask questions. So you might very specifically say, I would love it if everybody poses a question or two for me. It is up to you if you want to actually respond to those questions in the conversation. You can participate just as much as anybody else in your own workshop. You don't have to, but this can be really useful to find out where are people getting confused, where are people curious about your intentions, your aims, what uncertainties do they have. So you might find some real utility to that. And then the last option and approach that I like people to think about is what I call the reader response approach. So this is a little bit different, where readers were going to act as if we're in a literature class, where they're making note of symbols, themes, characterization, motivations that they see in characters. Are there images that they unpack in a poem? Do they look at why a particular verb is used several times in the same essay or story? Think of this as it's an interpretive experience rather than one that is producing sense of strengths and strengths of things that you can work on. But it can still be really helpful in terms of finding out is what it is that I'm hoping readers will get out of this, what they're actually getting out of it. So those are some things that you can choose from. Again, these are not the only ways that you can say that you want us to give you feedback. You can say whatever you like. You can combine them in some way if you want. You could say, just give me whatever kind of feedback you want, but I also really would like to get everyone to do this at least once. This is totally bespoke to you as an individual writer. The goal is for you to get whatever kind of feedback you think is going to be most useful for you. So that's what I want you to put in that note at the top. Just give us any guidance or particular way that you want us to approach your workshop.